and some good place for good pasta and pizza and gelato.
Un po' di gelato alla crema.
I mean, this basically sums up this guy's career, doesn't it? So the 2021 driver market is really starting to gain momentum now, with big names like Sebastian Vettel, Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo locked down to their new teams, and also Sir Monalot here rejoining the field with Renault. However, there's still a lot of questions that we need to answer, such as where do Perez and Hulkenberg now fit in? What will happen to Alex Albon at Red Bull, and how many times will Vettel Spinala in the Aston Martin next year? Hang on a second, that's the wrong video, isn't it? But there's also this guy. Daniil Kvyat is currently in his 6th season of Formula 1, and at this point probably holds the record for the most times a driver's been dropped by an organisation throughout his career. And coming towards the end of the 2020 season, we find ourselves in a similar situation once again, where Daniil's seat is under threat from the likes of Red Bull's latest crops of genetically engineered robots. But the question is, are we entering the Russian swan song, or is there another unexpected chapter in this man's story? Hey there guys, and welcome to FP1, and today we're back to talk about Daniil Kvyat. I don't know if it's just me, but it almost feels like yesterday that a certain young Russian began making waves in junior categories before being fast-tracked to Formula 1 at the age of just 19. But 7 years on, what looked like a star-studded career has, well, gone to So today then, let's take a look back at the career of Daniil Kvyat and deduce whether he really deserves another year in the sport in 2021. And if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the content around. Also, let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments below, and as always, I'll try and get back to as many of you as I can. But anyway, let's get into things then. In 1994, the Russians launched a new submarine, the K-141 Kursk, which was armed with 24 torpedoes, and in the same year, another torpedo was born in the form of Daniil Kvyat in Ufa, Russia. Kvyat had always been interested in motor racing, and at the age of 11 made his professional karting debut. Over the course of 4 years, Kvyat was, well, incredibly successful, taking championships in the KF3 Silver Cup, the Bridgestone Cup, and South Garda Winter Cup, among many more. All of this success then meant that the young Russian was making waves higher up in motorsport, most notably with the Boffins at Red Bull, who quickly snapped up Daniil into their young driver program, joining the ranks of Sebastian Vettel, Jean-Eric Vergne, and Brendan Hartley. Red Bull were very quick to promote Kvyat up into single-seaters, placing him in the Formula BMW European Championship in 2010. Now, the field that year was nothing particularly special, with the only drivers of note being fellow Red Bull junior Carlos Sainz, now Formula E racer Robin Freitz, and IndyCar driver Jack Harvey. But this season wasn't great though. While Kvyat was consistent, he was just consistently usually finishing in and around the rear of the field. His second half of the season was, in fairness, a little bit better, snatching a P2 in the last race at Monza. But all the while, Sainz would have a much stronger campaign, picking up 5 podiums and finishing 4th overall in the championship, with Kvyat sat back in 10th. 2011 then would see Kvyat have a much more successful year, firstly taking part in the Toyota Racing Series where he picked up a win and 6 podiums, then moving to the Formula Renault 2.0 series where he would continue to be joined by Carlos Sainz. Though Daniil would still lose out to Carlos, he was much closer to the Spaniard this time around, taking home 2 wins and 6 podiums, which placed him 3rd in the standings. In addition to this, Kvyat was able to finish ahead of future F1 drivers Stoffel Vandoorne and Will Stevens. The Russian stuck with Formula Renault 2.0 for a second season in 2012, first competing in the Alps series, which he proceeded to dominate, then the Euro Cup, where he narrowly missed out on the title to Vandoorne. This positive momentum would continue into 2013, where Kvyat graduated the GP3 championship. In his rookie year, Kvyat stormed the title, rarely finishing outside the top 5 all season. So let's just pause then and see what we've got so far. So we've got a guy who, in fairness to him, had a bit of a shaky start, but has gotten stronger and stronger as he progressed through the junior categories. So the next step then would naturally be GP2, right? However, Red Bull had other plans. They basically said, F that, let's chuck this kid in F1 instead. When Mark Webber announced his retirement from the sport at the end of 2013, fellow Aussie Daniel Ricciardo stepped up to replace his compatriot. That left the void at Toro Rosso for 2014, which Kvyat filled alongside Jean-Eric Vergne. However, this move wasn't without its controversy. Also in the hunt for the Toro Rosso seat was a man named Antonio Felix da Costa, and many had thought the safer move from Red Bull would be to put him in the F1 seat, whilst letting Kvyat continue to grow in GP2. However, in the end, da Costa was denied his F1 chance and has since gone on to win the Macau GP, Formula E title, and many more. In fact, I covered this in more detail in a video outlining Red Bull's other rejects a few months ago, so I'll leave all the links to that down in the description of this one. But anyway, Kvyat stepped into the F1 limelight with a lot of pressure on his back. So, how did he perform? Well, honestly, not too badly at all. Daniil had a strong start to the season, picking up points with 9th on his debut and therefore becoming the youngest point scorer in F1 history. Well, until this guy came along. Kvyat also managed to score points in Malaysia, China, Britain and Belgium, however he fell away in the second half of the season. His teammate Verne, on the other hand, was a lot more consistent over the whole campaign and ended up finishing 2 places higher than Daniil in the championship at the end of the year. However, while Kvyat was having a fairly good debut season, all the talk was instead surrounding the senior Red Bull team. The reigning world champion at the time, Sebastian Vettel, was having a, well, shall we say, less than ideal season. The German was struggling with the new regulations and was being outclassed by new teammate Daniel Ricciardo. As a result, Sebastian decided to jump ship after 15 years with Red Bull to sign with Ferrari for 2015. Which went well, didn't it? So Red Bull were left with the decision to make as to which Toro Rosso driver was going to step up alongside Ricciardo. And that's an easy choice, right? I mean, Verne had more years under his belt and was proven to be the more consistent of the 2 Toro Rosso drivers and beat his teammate in the championship. Well, instead, Red Bull decided to fire Verne and promoted Kvyat to the senior team instead. Hang on, sorry, what the fuck? This was a bold move from Red Bull, putting their faith in the young Russian and tipping him as a future world champion. A comment which aged well. Kvyat's debut season for Red Bull was actually pretty good though. The 2015 car was, in fairness, one of the worst in the team's history, falling from 2nd to 4th in the Constructors' Championship. That said, Kvyat managed to secure a podium in the team's best finish of the season with 2nd place at the Hungarian Grand Prix. He was also able to outscore Ricciardo that season, though his teammate's reliability played a large factor in this. However, Kvyat's season was marred with incidents, with large crashes in the US and Japanese Grand Prix weekends, ending the season on a bit of a sour note. And now we've got to get to 2016, which was, well, interesting, to say the least. Danny started the season strong with P7 in Bahrain, then got the team's first podium of the year with a 3rd in China. That 3rd place, however, came after a clash with Sebastian Vettel, and at the same time, we were seeing the rise of a certain Max Verstappen. Red Bull at this point were looking for an excuse to promote Max to the top team, especially as he was quickly becoming hot property in the driver market. And then we get to the Russian Grand Prix, where this happened.
Огонь на подавление! Враг сзади по левому флангу! Противник на северо-востоке! Противник северо-запад! Противник на юге! Они атакуют с юго-востока! Заметьте, противник на юго-западе!
Came like a torpedo.
Well, it's racing.
Within a week of the Russian Grand Prix, news broke that Red Bull decided to drop Kvyat in favour of Max Verstappen. But hey, I mean, it couldn't get any worse for Kvyat, right?
At 18 years and 227 days old, Max Verstappen wins a Formula One Grand Prix, wins the Spanish Grand Prix, and is the youngest driver ever to win a Formula One World Championship Grand Prix.
And this really would be the start of a few difficult years for young Danny here. Though he managed to keep his seat for 2017, he found himself in silly incidents during that period. This all culminated in Singapore, where he binned it in the wet and was soon after dropped from the team. Kvyat was able to make a one-off return at the US Grand Prix, where he actually performed pretty well, finishing in 10th. Though this wasn't enough to save him and he was dropped again, this time permanently. Or so we thought. Red Bull's lack of drivers without super license and their desire to get rid of Brendan Hartley led to Daniil being recalled to the team for 2019. It seemed as though the year out, where he'd been testing for Ferrari, had actually done him a lot of good. Kvyat returned as a much more mature driver, performing well on the Toro Rosso and scoring the team's first podium in 10 years at the hectic German Grand Prix. And all the while, Kvyat's original Toro Rosso replacement, Pierre was struggling to find his feet in the sister Red Bull car. Now, this opened a possible window for Daniil to make it back to the senior team. I mean, he had far more experience and more points than his rookie teammate. However, once again, Red Bull decided to promote the driver with less experience, with Alex Albon eventually getting the seat over Kvyat. And this is really where I think Daniil's downturn in form began. Prior to this, Kvyat was on a high. He was back in F1, performing well and outscoring his new teammate. But then suddenly, it became clear no matter how good you become, Helmut Marko isn't going to give you another chance. Well, unless you're 2018 Max Verstappen, of course. I've got the Dutch fans on side with that one. In the second half of 2019, we saw Kvyat slip away from the limelight, as Gasly bettered his 3rd place with a P2 in Brazil, and really we've seen the Russians' poor form continue into 2020. Now, coming into the 2020 season, the pressure was always going to be on the Alpha Tauri boys, with a lot of Red Bull juniors climbing higher and higher up the ladder in junior categories. So what Kvyat had to do here was just consistently beat his teammate Gasly, which shouldn't be too hard, right?
Pierre Gasly wins the Italian Grand Prix. Oh my, is that just wonderful?
Oh boy, here we go again. Now, just to clarify something, I don't actually think Kvyat's performed badly this season at all. Rather, I think he's placing that Alpha Tauri where it probably should be. Problem is, Gasly's been out driving that car, and thus making Daniil look pretty subpar in the process. Add to this that in races where Kvyat's going well, it's the bad luck that seems to creep up on him. A good example of this was at the British Grand Prix, where despite having a pretty poor qualifying, Daniil was going strong in the race and had caught up to his teammate. Then this happened. So at the end of the day, I don't think Kvyat will be able to hold on to that seat for 2021. With Super License points set to be scrapped for this year, Red Bull have got the perfect opportunity to promote one of its juniors into the Alpha Tauri car alongside Gasly. And in all likelihood, I'd say that current F2 star Yuki Tsunoda will get that seat. Given that Honda as well want a Japanese driver back in the sport, it kind of looks like the perfect fit. So where does that leave Danny here? Well, the title of this video asks whether he deserves a seat for next year, and honestly, I think he does. But there's no way that's going to come at Alpha Tauri. If Kvyat wants to stay in the sport, then he will have to find a seat elsewhere, with the only other two options I see really being Alfa Romeo and Haas. And as much as I'd love to see Kvyat and Gunther Steiner go toe to toe, I personally just can't see it with free agents like Hulk and Perez also available. So my thoughts are then that Kvyat will probably find himself out of an F1 drive at the end of 2020, but what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me over on Twitter as well if you want to hear more of my thoughts and opinions. With that all said and done, I will catch you all later in the week with another video, but until then, hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I'll see you all in the next one.